Hi guys, welcome back. So this is part 3 of the cheap rifle challenge. Wait, what happened to part 2? The GoPro died. The downrange GoPro's finally packed up. I've lost a ton of footage, which is annoying. And even more annoying is I filmed a really cool video a fortnight ago on this. It's an illuminated bell target. I had a brilliant video. It was really fun to film, but of course without the downrange footage, yeah, you've lost all context of the video, so I'm probably going to end up refilming that. I was also laid up for a couple of weeks, which wasn't fun. It set me back a little bit in my testing and getting everything done. Now I've only got 8 weeks until the start of the Winter League, 9 weeks, 10 weeks, something like that, not a lot of time anyway. I'm also struggling to find decent batches of pellets, so I'm slowly getting a handle on how this rifle works, what makes it tick. So progress has been slow. It's also been incredibly windy, trying to actually get decent weather of late when I can actually spare the time to get out and film and do my testing. It's been incredibly hard, but I'm never one to shy away from when things aren't going to plan. But at the moment I'm set back a little bit. I've formulated a plan to get back on track. Hopefully we can get this thing dialed in and we can go and smash it on a precision bench rest circuit. So let's get into it, shall we? Right, this has been an absolute pain in the backside. Things have changed a little bit. We've lost a whole video's worth of footage, so this is actually part 3, but obviously you've missed out on part 2 entirely, so I'm gonna have to try and put all the bits and pieces. Luckily I've still got the cards and everything that I shot previously, so I've still got those, but I don't have any downrange footage for any of those, so we should be able to whip it all together into a bit of a video. Now we're back on with the budget rifle. So this is the Precihole. It is a PX100 benchrest X3, so it's a sort of a in the middle, if you like, of the Match Pro versions and the sort of entry-level PCPs that they do. We've already established that it's pretty accurate. It's got an incredibly good trigger, especially at this price point, and I'm hoping to take this into competition over the winter. Big improvement at the moment, we've now got the cylinder band up the front in this chassis. Now this is a chassis from Aeron ACZ, so this is actually a FX Dreamline streamline chassis. The fit's reasonable. It's a little bit sort of open at the back here, but for what we need and the purposes that we're going to be using it for, it should be fine. It's a little bit more rigid than the factory chassis that these come in, although I only got this as like a bare action, so I didn't actually have a stock for it. And since the last video, I've now polished the barrel, so I thought we've got nothing really to lose. We've got some pretty good performance, but I'm also struggling to get decent batches of fresh pellets. It's a real problem. Trying to get hold of JSB shorts at the moment is really problematic, and trying to get hold of, well, H&Ns as well. Baracuda FTs, 4.50s and 4.51s are very thin on the ground, and this is one of the reasons why I like to try and do some of my testing in the off season, because of course, busiest time of the year, obviously a lot more people out shooting, it's a lot harder to get stuff. But we get 50 to 60 good shots out of this, an average spread of 6 to 7 feet per second with a good quality pellet. So certainly consistent enough despite not being regulated. I don't think I'm going to go to the time and expense of fitting a regulator. It's not going to yield me anything. In competition I'm only doing 10 shots plus a few sighters, so if I've got 20 good shots and this is more than consistent enough over that sort of smaller 50 to 60 shot spread, yeah, could I get 100 shots out of it? Probably. Do I need to? Not really. Do I want to add the cost? Do I want to spend the time? Not really. I'd quite rather just keep it cheap and cheerful and see if we can get it to be as accurate as I think it can be. I'm going to switch everything around and then we're just going to go straight onto a load of groups. They're all going to be 5-shot groups, if I remember, if I can keep count. Air arms fields, die one to start with. It's a really awkward position down here, but the clamp rig is nice and stable. The scope's on there just so I can keep an eye on it through a group, just to make sure nothing wanders or anything like that. Hopefully somewhere there. Not quite sure what happened there. I think that was a squiffy one that I didn't notice, but I'm actually going to run this down until it needs fully refilling. So I'm going to run it down below 90 bar just to see what actually happens. Right, I'll do one more group and then we'll have to top her up, and then we might well move on to the H&Ns, I think. Right, die 1 air arms fields. I thought I might get slightly better groups out of them, but that tin is a little bit bashed up. That whole sleeve, I had some when I first got the XTI, they shot really, really well. Ordered some fresh ones and the postman threw them over the back gate, and yeah, one that dropped a bit low. The die 7s were definitely better. We're going on to the Baracuda FTs now. These are 4.5 ones, but annoyingly the wind's getting up a little bit now, so I'm going to have to try and wait for little breaks in the wind. I'm going to swap back over to my single downrange camera now, but let's see what happens. I've just topped her up. I've actually slightly filled it above its power curve, so hopefully by the time, not over its working pressure, but remember when we did last time, we worked out it shot best from about 165 down. Well, I've filled it to 175 at the moment, because I think we'll need a couple of shots for these to settle in after the JSBs, but it's not a bad start. Pretty nice. Should we swap over to the second batch of 451s? Let's do that, shall we? Right, I've got one more batch of those. I think we'll swap over to the others. I'm going to swap the cards around and we'll get a fresh batch on, but it doesn't like them ones. Right, didn't like those ones, the second batch. The next ones are 450s. I think I might have said they were going to be 451s, but they're 4.50s. Hopefully they'll group better than those ones. The 451s that we started with, they shot really well. Unfortunately, the die ones, they're a bit touch and go in most things. Unfortunately, there's a lot of little tiny dings and bashes in them, and it's not really worth sorting them, unfortunately. They're really good over the chrono. In fact, I'd use them over the chrono a lot because they give nice stable figures, but downrange, but that's pretty good. Hopefully this third batch of 4.50s will give us a grouping similar to that, so let's get cracked on and find out, shall we? I think I've just loaded that one the wrong way around. Can't have done. Right, let's move that card around. Right, pressure's dropping quick. It's time for a top up. We can see that it's just opening that up. We're just getting a bit of vertical stringing now. We can give it a fill up and we'll find something else to try. Right, we ran that down a little bit low. It was just starting to drop off of its power curve then. So we're going to go back onto the die 7 air arms fields. Now we tested those in the first video. They were pretty good, but of course, in the meantime, I have given the barrel a polish. But these may take a little while to settle in because we've just been using a load of H&Ns through it, and I've just refilled it. Now when I was inspecting this barrel before I polished it, it looked pretty good. Didn't really expect to gain anything, but curiosity got the better of me. The hardest thing at the moment is trying to find decent batches of pellets, especially now it's the summer. A lot of retailers, when you ring around, they've only got dribs and drabs left. If they've only got 2 or 3 tins, you don't really want them. Because you know what'll happen. You'll buy 1 tin, they'll be really good, and by the time you go back to get some more, they'll be gone and you won't be able to find any. It's getting windy, I think it's time to go. I've still got the old cards we better compare, but I don't think there's any appreciable difference. I think if anything, they grouped slightly better before the barrel polish, but it is now a lot windier, so yeah, we need to be careful how we work with these results so we don't give ourselves any false negatives and some false positives. Right, let's go and have a look at home, shall we? Right, let's have a look at where we are so far. So there's an awful lot of cards here. I've got tons of different cards that we've been shooting. I've kept everything, I've marked everything up. Now if you haven't seen the last video, I'll give you a quick rundown of where we're at. This was one of the funniest ones. JSB heavies, look, absolutely terrible. That batch, as I mentioned previously, wouldn't group in anything. To look at those, to pick through them, they looked a decent batch. They actually weighed up, sized up nice, they looked perfect, yet they wouldn't group for toffee, which is a bit of a strange one. JSB heavies are normally pretty good, but that particular batch, yeah, unfortunately, look at that. British standard group size gauge, look, 5p, absolutely useless. It happens, and this is the slight problem. If you're not overly familiar with this sort of stuff, you can have 2 tins of pellets that look absolutely identical, and for all intents and purposes they are identical, yet one will group and one won't. And it, unfortunately, especially this time of year when it's harder to actually get hold of pellets, it just exacerbates that problem a little bit. So yeah, won't be using them again. We've tried a few other different ones as well. So I went back to the JSB shorts. Pretty good, get the odd tiny little group. Now that's really what we're hoping for all day long, but still getting a little bit of a spread. Again, the conditions when I tested these, they weren't really perfect. There was a bit of wind moving around. That's what we're aiming for. I also tried some of the old Crosman Premiers, some of my old die 2s. So they're about 15 years old. Brilliant pellet, really well made, but quite hard. They didn't load particularly nicely into that barrel. But again, by no stretch of the imagination is this inaccurate. These will hold tight groups out to 35, 40 yards, no problem. And bear in mind, this action's about, what, 400 quid? Something like that. It's a very cheap rifle. If this was an HFT rig, I'd pick any of these, them 451 Baracudas, and I'd just go and run them. They'd be absolutely fine. But I do need to improve the groupings a bit more so, just to give me more margin for error in competition. I'm hoping to get the group sizes down to somewhere in the region of 7mm outside edge to outside edge, which, yeah, great, that's fine. These are sort of 9.5 to 10 mil, so I do need to pitch them down just a tiny bit. That's where this power adjuster comes in a moment. Quite interesting to see the differences between them batches of Baracudas. Generally, if your rifle likes the Baracudas, then you can go and grab multiple tins and they will generally all be pretty similar performance-wise. But we can see that these ones here, and the conditions were quite similar through that test there, but that second batch of those, definitely a bit more spread. Look, one dropped way off here. We're definitely going to take these going further forward once we start using the power adjuster and see if we can fine tune it, because actually some of these groups, these are sort of 8mm, so I've only got to pitch a little tiny bit back off of that, and I think if we can slow the pellet speeds down a bit, we can close them groups up. Now bearing in mind, these are straight from the tin as well. I haven't measured, I haven't checked any of these. All of this testing so far has been stuff straight from the tin. Then going further forward, we can actually go, right, do we need to weigh these? Do we even need to size them? Do we maybe need to lube them? We've only got to shave a tiny little bit off of these groups, but I mean, look at that. You can't get away from that. There's no excuses for any flies or anything like that. And there was still a bit of a breeze running, so I'm not absolutely unhappy. I would like to tighten them up a bit more, but bear in mind that this is completely stock standard. I've just changed the trigger blade over, of course. It doesn't affect and change the function of the rifle at all. I've gone back to the barrel band as well. Through all of the testing, typically for most of our outdoor rifles we would end up running them bandless. Now this is a 15mm diameter barrel, but it is necked down to 12mm in the block there, so I think maybe there's a little bit of vibration on firing, something like that. We could probably use something of maybe a harmonic type tuner, but I don't really want to get into that if I don't have to. It shot slightly better with the barrel band on, so for the simplest option, whack that back on, carry on the testing. Here's a quick one, look. So from the different groups, these were shot previously with the barrel band on. Same pellets, look, we can see we've got nice tight groups here. Same again now, it was marginally windier, and this is why it's always hard to sort of get clean data, especially when you're working outdoors. Now I really ought to try and get the clamp rig inside, but you can see there that they're probably 30-40% larger groups with the barrel band off, so definitely first thing we do, put the barrel band back on. But again, still nice tiny little groups. If you were pest controlling or anything like that, I'd just run it as it was. I'd be quite happy with that. But as I've mentioned probably numerous times in the video, we need to get them groups tighter still. In the first video, look, JSB heavies, so that was 2018 heavies compared to a particularly poor batch of 2021s. It's absolutely incredible. And to look at them, they both looked identical. They look and they weigh up nicely, yet one tin will group like that and one tin will group like that. It's crazy, really. Right, so my plan going forward anyway, the first thing is this power adjuster. It's quite a crude bit of kit. So at the moment these have no power adjustment on them. They don't have a Venturi screw to just fine tune the speeds, and it's just got a fixed hammer adjuster. So we've got a little bush that's going to go into the back of the rifle. I've got a little adjuster piece here, and then I've just got a crude locking nut that's going to go on the back of that just to keep it all taut. Now once I've settled on a pellet speed, I will probably just machine up a bush and make up another power adjuster like it's got, so it's sort of fixed, because once I've got where I want it, I'm not likely to be adjusting. I'm going to get enough pellets so that I can have it set up as it is, and if I need to adjust the power just with a little shim washer or something like that, then I can do. Interestingly, the way that I've built this, it can only reduce the power actually, because if you try and put the power up, you won't be able to put the lock nut on the back and it will just undo. However, I think I really want to try some of these pellets a lot slower. From previous testing, especially in the XTI and the likes, if we can run the JSB Exact Expresses around the 730 to 740 feet per second mark, they grouped considerably tighter. And I know for a fact from what a lot of my competitors and a lot of my mates are using, especially with the H&Ns, they're pitching them down into sort of the low 10 foot-pound mark. Definitely going to find a slight gain when we start actually getting a bit deeper into this. However, so far the trigger's working really well. It's cocking nice and slick. I'm quite keen to keep the silencer on the end, to keep the moderator back on there. It's got a bit of a crack. Now at the club it doesn't matter, but up at the farm I also want, going forward, the main reason I want to use this rifle is that we've got the single shot tray and the magazines here. Once it's in the chassis, I can potentially use this same rifle for my benchrest competitions if we can get it where we need to. There's some lightweight sport competitions that I'll be able to use it for at the club. If I want to just detune the power or to drop the Precihole Match Pro action into the chassis, I can then also use it for practicing 10-metre shooting over the winter. And ultimately I'd also like to get into a bit of bell target shooting going forward. Hence the video that we did on the illuminated bell target. I really enjoyed that, but you'd have to wait and I'll have to refilm that one, unfortunately. Crude little bag rider on here at the moment. I don't know the final depth that I need this. I need to get this action accurate enough, get it on a rest. I'm probably also going to need to build a slightly taller front rest compared to the low profile one I've got at the moment for the XTI. Next little hurdle that we've got to overcome. Now I did a video on this little mount some years ago. In fact, it is a UTG, it's basically a split clamp type dovetailed Picatinny adapter. The breech block on this, similar to an S200, has got quite a small mounting area up the front here on the front portion of the block. Now if I can lay that out carefully. The one thing that I do know that I'm going to be using going forward is probably not this scope. This is the Falcon S40, but I'm absolutely going to be using the T50 Plus off of the XTI on this when I get it set up. I haven't even doubted that scope once throughout the Summer League. It's been on there, it's worked fine. When I was using the Vector, the Sentinel X, a few times I was a little bit like, oh, has the scope moved? Just, it put doubt in my mind, but the T50 has been absolutely spot on. However, these big scopes, the longer eye relief and the likes, that, when I eyeball it, is probably going to sit here. So of course, I may just be able to squeeze the front mount on. It's going to look a little bit weird, but I've got this mount here. Now I actually chopped the end off of this. I'm going to have to get a fresh one of these, but it had another couple of ribs on the Picatinny up the front here. That fits onto the Precihole dovetails absolutely beautifully. Now the layout with this, we can probably just chop that in half, have that as a reach forward mount, and I can slam it on some nice Picatinny mounts. If we cut this in half, I can just slide the rear portion back wherever I need it to suit the rear mount. So I think that's going to be a cost-effective option. It's going to do what I want. I also wanted to experiment with bringing the scope height up a little bit, just to try and straighten my neck up a little bit more. Of course, for the fixed distance shooting that we're doing, scope height really is kind of irrelevant. So I'm just trying a few little things, always experimenting. And I think that's going to work well. So that split clamp arrangement grabs hold of those dovetails beautifully, full engagement, easy enough to cut that in half and basically turn it into a two-piece riser. There's no inclination in that either. So of course, if this was a 20 MOA rail, for instance, then yeah, you can't really cut them and splay them apart. But because it's just a horizontal rail, we can get away with that. Nicely made, about 30 quid. Like I say, I did a video on these before. It's an interesting bit of kit, and like I say, it fits that beautifully. Right, I think that's probably going to do it for the moment, guys. We've got a bit of a plan to go forward the next time that we get a bit of a break in the weather that I can actually get out. I'm super busy. I've got so much going on in the background, it's incredible. But I really need to get a handle on this. So barrel band's back on. We've got a bit of another little wormhole to go down with the power testing. I need to give this a good polish up before we fit it. Yeah, so sorry for the lack of updates recently. It's been a bit of a nightmare. GoPro's cost us a lot of time. I was dying on my backside for a while. But I think we're back into it now, so I will see you in the next one.